why whenever someone sends me something, I always say, just Google that, whatever you sent me, and then debunked. Just do that first.
Yeah.
And then look at both sides. You know, but people don't want that debunk. That debunk's not sexy.
Yeah.
And we're live, ladies and gentlemen. We're live sporting the latest Round Earth Shill. We're just coming out with it. Round Earth Shill t-shirts. Both Jamie and I get $3 per month from the federal government to tell you that the world is round. And Mick West is a big part of it all. He is one of the main shills that tells everybody that not only that, he has a whole website dedicated to arguing against people that think the world is flat.
Yeah, the difference is I don't get paid for anything.
Come on, stop lying. I know you're getting $3.50 per month.
Yeah, I wish I did. I have to pay for my web hosting, and it's coming out of my pocket, and nobody pays me anything.
See, Mick West is serious. He's not joking around with us. This has got to be one of the most bizarre trends. And Jamie, I think you said it first, that you thought it was originally a troll. You thought that they were fucking around like...
I still think some people are.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
but I feel like
lost.
It started out with like 4chan or something like that, or maybe Reddit. These crazy kids, these wacky kids, they decided to start trolling, saying that the Earth is round or the Earth is flat.
I think that's some of it, but a lot of it is just people who, they actually believe it.
Yes. There's a lot that actually believe it.
There are people actually believe it, and then there's people who see that there's people out there who believe it, and then they start like kind of egging these people on.
Yes.
And then it becomes really, really hard to tell where the dividing line is. Who's actually trolling and who's actually a genuine true believer?
There are absolutely a lot of true believers, but there's also a lot of people with like little green frogs in their avatar that think it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of that type of person has kind of adopted it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You were talking about shit posting the other day.
Yes.
And that's just something that you could do is if you want to just annoy people.
Yes.
By shitposting, you'll just post a bunch of flat Earth memes because they're so infuriating to the average person that they're just going to be, what the heck is this that this person is posting? And, it's the shitposter enjoys that type of thing.
I was watching a video with this guy was ranting on and that it's not a theory, that we need to stop accepting that the flat Earth is a theory, but that it's a fact. We need to start accepting the fact that it's a fact. He was hilarious. Let me find his, because I saved it. His, I think his name was like Vegan Warrior or something like that, which is always yes, Vegan Warrior. He's a realist. It says it's no long. He's not only a flat earther, he's a realist.
Yeah, I think I've come across him. I think there's actually a relatively small number of people who are really active in promoting the flat Earth stuff on YouTube.
What's adorable is that they keep claiming that all the photos of Earth are fake, but they don't have a single photo of this fucking ice wall that's supposed to be around Antarctica.
Yeah.
They don't have a single photo of this fucking ice wall that's supposed to be around Antarctica.
Yeah.
They don't have a single photo of this fucking ice wall that's supposed to be around Antarctica.
Yeah.
They don't have a single photo of this fucking ice wall that's supposed to be around Antarctica.
Yeah.
And they keep saying, erroneously, that you're not allowed to fly over Antarctica. Like, yes, you are. They keep saying that there's no photographs of Earth from space, that they're all composites. No, that's not true. Why do they keep saying that? They keep saying that.
Simmons' job is...
It's primarily taking data and making pictures out of it.
That's what this is. A composite of data sets from several different instruments translated into a picture.
Bit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
There's a fucking satellite. There's a bunch of satellites, but there's one from Japan that takes high-resolution photos of the Earth every 10 minutes. The full Earth from 22,000 miles away.
Let me stop you for a second because, again, I didn't believe you, right? Like, I still don't believe you. I think the Earth is round. So, with that said, you and I were talking about this podcast earlier this week, so I'm like, all right, I'm going to run to Google, and I'm going to Google pictures of Earth because that exists. So, if you look over here on my screen, I have it here. This is the one that I pulled up. This is from a Russian satellite, right?
Yeah.
And I'm looking around. And it's interesting to me. It looks real detailed. Doesn't look, you know, like you guys say it's not real, right?
That's 100% cartoon.
Okay, and that's fine.
You can you know you know it is, right? You know it is, right?
Why is it orange?
No, let me just explain here.
It's fake as fuck.
So I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this picture that everyone can see right now, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to zoom in here and take a look. Again, I believe that the Earth is round, but why in the hell is there a hand?
Oh
no! Why is there a Photoshop?
Why is there a hand in
why is there a Photoshop hand on the most detailed satellite?
Well, because it's clearly Photoshop.
Of course,
a 4-year-old can tell.
Right, but again, like the point is, this is taking off, right? This whole flat Earth thing is taking off. If you're going to post a picture up on the internet and say that it's the most detailed picture ever taken from space, don't have the grabby hand tool still on the picture.
Yeah. Well, they admit it.
Yeah.
But there's also like there's a US satellite that was just launched last year, the GOES 16 satellite, which is basically the same resolution.
Pull this sucker right up to your face.
Sorry.
No
and the Russians have a satellite. Everyone's got their own satellite because these are basically weather satellites.
Yeah.
So they put them like over the equator so they can see their own country. So Russia has one. You can mostly see India. China has one. It's not as good as the other ones, but the Russian ones are like it's the same resolution, 121 megapixels. That's the size of the image they do. It's like 11,000 pixels by 11,000 pixels view of the Earth. And you can zoom in and you can see cities, you can see contrails. And you can actually use these images from the satellites to actually match up with the views of clouds and contrails from the ground. So you can actually check to see if these images are actually correct, at least for where you are.
Right.
And then you could like find a friend somewhere else and ask them, like, do you have like this type of cloud overhead? So you can actually verify whether these images are actually real or not.
Well, I brought it up to my friend Eddie, and he said it's all fake. He said all the photos are fake. They look fake. I'm like, but how would you know what a real photo of Earth from 22,000 miles looked like? Wouldn't it look exactly like Earth?
Yeah,
like,
I think when you get to that stage of deep belief, you kind of have to believe that they're fake. There's no way. And it's a real challenge. Like, how do you actually break through that for somebody? How can you actually convince them that something isn't fake if they just automatically assume it's fake. And I think, has the person actually looked in detail at these images?
Most people know.
And have they looked at the fact that, you get one every 10 minutes or one every 15 minutes, and do, every single image is this 121 megapixel image, and it all matches up exactly with what the weather is around the world. And it matches up with all the other satellite images, one from the Russians, one from the Chinese, one from the Japanese. They all match up. And I really don't think that the people who say, it's fake, have really actually looked.
Well, you're
what's
absolutely
actually
right.
out there.
They definitely haven't, nor do they have any desire to. It's a belief issue, and it's almost like a religious issue. It's really fascinating. It's completely infected the world of professional pool players.
Really? Professional pool players?
Yeah, professional pool players. There's a guy named C.J. Wiley. He's a top pool player who's 100% convinced the Earth is flat.
Wow.
There's another guy named Max Everly. He's a buddy of mine. Out of his mind. Thinks the world's flat.
I wonder if that's related to their obsession with the table being flat.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, they have to make sure the table's level, but then they've got these little round balls on the table as well. So
that's confusing, right?
Yeah, you've got a little solar system going on with your pool balls.
What's confusing is they're smart guys. Like if you talk to them, you'd be like, "This is a reasonable, intelligent guy."
Are they really believing that it's flat?
100%. Yeah, they're not shit posting.
Unusual. That's unusual.
People, they go down a YouTube rabbit hole, and that's part of the problem. Is once you believe something, it's very difficult to unbelieve it.
It is, and there's so much out there that if you tell people to do some research, what they end up doing is just looking at more YouTube videos that confirm what they believe. They prefer the ones that confirm it.
Of course. But it's just amazing to me that people would decide that all of these photos were fake so that they don't believe the world is round. But yet they don't have a single photo of this fucking flat Earth. Not one.
Yep.
Not one photo. But yet they don't have a single photo of this fucking flat Earth. Not one.
Yep.
Not one photo. But yet they don't have a single photo of this fucking flat Earth. Not one.
Yep.
Not one photo. But yet they don't have a single photo of this fucking flat Earth. Not one.
Yep.
Not one photo. Not only that, every planet you see is round. You could follow them. You could look at them with if you have a reasonable telescope. You could see the difference as they change and spin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can tell that they're round. There's
a lot of flat earthers have the same camera that I've got, which is a Nikon P900.
Flat earthers have an excellent camera.
They have. I brought one with me.
They have Nikon has a deal with the Flat Earth Society.
It's this camera. It's just like it's not like a SLR or anything. It's just like a $600 camera, but it's got this really really long zoom lens on it. Like it's like a 2,000 millimeter zoom lens, so you can see, you can zoom in on the moon, you can zoom in on stars and planets.
Right.
And you can use this camera. I've used it a few times to actually take pictures of Jupiter and of Venus and Mars, and you can actually just make out the roundness of the planet and the actual shadow of the sun. Like you'll see Venus as being like the moon, being like an arc, and you'll see Jupiter and you see the bands of Jupiter, and you can do that with this camera. And this is a camera that a lot of them have because they're obsessed with zooming in on things that are on the horizon, like ships going beyond the horizon. But if they just take the same camera that they have and point it upwards, they would actually see things in the see the solar system basically that really can't be explained in any other way. Like one great thing is the moons of Jupiter. Like if you look at Jupiter real closely, even with some binoculars, you can see it's got these 4 little moons that are orbiting it. And it looks like just 4 little lights in a line with Jupiter, and they actually move around in a regular pattern. And they move around. They've got orbits of like some of them are, I think, like 80 hours or something. So they move around really fast. Like every day, it's a completely different pattern of these little dots around Jupiter. And you can actually see that with this camera. I've taken photos of it, posted them on the website, or even with binoculars. And if you actually watch it from day to day, you will see the moons of Jupiter move in exactly the same way that science predicts that they should move. We're using Kepler's laws of planetary motion and Newton's law of gravitation. They move exactly as if they are a little simulation of a planetary system. So either there's some kind of weird hologram up in that little corner of the sky which moves around, or there is actually a planet there with little moons orbiting it.
Probably hologram. What when did you first become aware of this? Like you've run Metabunk for a long time, and for those who don't know, Mick and I met on the sci-fi show that I did, Joe Rogan Questions Everything, where we discussed chemtrails or contrails and what causes a jet engine to make what looks like artificial clouds by passing through condensation. The heat of the engine produces these contrails, and people are absolutely convinced that they're spraying. The government is spraying something in the sky, and you caught it. You had a really good explanation for it. You said they're basically like the training wheels for conspiracy theories, because
it's something you can see.
Yeah.
I think is kind of more enticing.
Yes.
And I think the same thing applies to the flat Earth. Now, you asked me when I got into the flat Earth thing. I became aware of it a few years ago.
What's that sound? We got some. The government is trying to. Oh, is that your camera? Yeah.
Yeah.
Freak me out, man. Oh, the government, man.
Spying on you. Yeah. So, like, when I first heard about the flat Earth theory, obviously I've heard it before. My father, going back. When I was young, he told me that he was a member of the Flat Earth Society.
Your father told you that?
Yeah.
Was he joking around?
Kind of, but what he was doing it in a kind of satirical way, ironically. He was doing it because, like, he was like saying people are too sure of themselves, and so I'm going to join the Flat Earth Society. He didn't believe the Earth was round.
So it's been around for quite a while, the Flat Earth Society.
The Flat Earth theory has been around. Obviously, like, thousands of years ago, people thought the Earth was round, and then slightly fewer thousand years ago, people figured out that it wasn't. It was figured out by the ancient Greeks, like 3,000 years ago, that it wasn't. And by the
that it wasn't round.
That it wasn't flat. Sorry.
Oh, you fucked it up. You gave up the goose. You said thousands of years ago that people thought the Earth was round, and they realized it wasn't.
Yeah.
You just right now you gave them fuel.
That's a quote that's going to go on YouTube.
Fucked up.
Like my "I am a shill" quote.
Yep.
From the last one. Which, strike that one.
A slight misquote.
Yeah. So yeah, what happened was science basically figured out the shape of the universe, and in the 1800s there was like gentlemen scientists doing all kinds of cool things with stars, like measuring the orbits and checking out how far away things were and discovering that there were galaxies and things like that. There's all this science going on. But then there was this kind of, this guy comes along called Samuel Rowbotham, who published under the name of Parallax in about 1860. And he started publishing what is basically the same as Eric Dubay's book that has been published now. Pretty much every single thing that is in Eric Dubay's current book you will find in Samuel Rowbotham's book from 1860. And in fact, if you read Dubay's book, which I don't recommend, you will see that about 80% of the text of Eric Dubay's book is actually quotes from these books from the 1800s. It's not actually this new stuff that he's discovered. It's all stuff like, if somebody walks away from you, you will see their feet disappear first. And then he has a 2-page quote of Samuel Rowbotham saying the exact same thing from the 1860s. So it's basically recycling this theory that started in the 1860s and then just adding a few little sprinkles to it, like, saying that astronauts must be fake and the space station is fake.
They think that satellites are fake as well.
Yeah.
But Dubay, he's hilarious. He thinks that dinosaurs are fake, nuclear bombs are fake. I mean, there's the idea that one person would be this mastermind that discovers all these monumental frauds.
Yeah, and he I don't think he's claiming to have discovered these things. There's lots of people who think that nukes are fake, and that dinosaurs being fake is an obvious thing for creationists and people of that ilk. But he's basically recycling theories in a way that is popular to the reader and figuring out how to get them across to people. So he does these YouTube videos that are very engaging. And they sound good. Then they sound, if you don't know what's what, they sound like they make sense.
That's the problem.
And some of them are quite technical. Like, at least they use a lot of technical terms.
Right.
But they delve into things like there's a variety of experiments. The Michelson-Morley experiment that Eddie mentioned is one of them that keeps cropping up. And then there's
which has never been reproduced. That's the experiment that supposedly...
No, it actually has been reproduced because it's
well, the wrong way, not the way that they wanted to.
The Michelson-Morley experiment was an experiment to detect the luminiferous ether, which is the supposed medium through which light travels. Now, back in the 1800s, we didn't know that light was made up out of photons because light was waves. So we thought that there was this stuff that permeated all of space called the luminiferous ether. Luminiferous ether. It's a little hard to pronounce. And that this is what light traveled through as waves going through. And like, they didn't know exactly how it worked, but they figured there must be this stuff that permeates all of space. And then they figured that since the Earth was moving, and these scientists actually knew at the time that the Earth was moving, so they were using this as a basis for their experiment, they thought that if the Earth is moving, then they will be able to detect the ether by doing this experiment. So what they did, they set up this experiment where they shot light one direction, then they shot it in the other direction, then when it came back together, it combined. And if they were moving through the ether, or if the ether was moving through them, then the light that went one way would interfere with the light that went the other way. So that was the whole experiment, was just this thing. They shot these two light beams in two directions, and they figured, like, you know, if we turn the table this way, it will change because we're now going through the ether in a different direction. But what happened was nothing was detected, which was kind of the start of people realizing, oh, there is no luminiferous ether permeating the universe.
But they used that to say that it's because the Earth isn't moving. That was what the flat Earth people tried to use, right?
Yeah, they did. But Michelson and Morley knew the Earth was moving.
Right.
They wanted to figure out whether the ether was moving, you know, with the Earth, or whether the Earth was moving through the ether.
Right.
So they were trying to detect the ether. So people who thought that the Earth was the center of the universe, not really so much flat Earthers, people who were geocentrists, people who thought that the sun went around the Earth and all the stars went around the Earth.
There's still people like that, by the way.
Oh yeah.
There's a recent resurgence. I think it was Gavin McGinnis sent me something where some guy thinks that the Earth is the center of the universe. Essentially, he was saying that it sort of confirms everything in Genesis. I was like, what?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you need to shoehorn the whole universe into, you know, the descriptions in Genesis, then you're probably going to have to take a few shortcuts. But yeah, there's these experiments like the Michelson-Morley experiment, but people bring them up, and they say that what they detected was no motion.
Right.
But what it actually detected was no luminiferous ether.
Right.
And because they detected no luminiferous ether, they eventually led to like theories about what light actually is, which is wave particle duality. You know, light is photons, which act both as a wave and as a particle, and eventually to the theory of relativity.
Well, you started Metabunk when? When did you?
I think it was about 5 years ago. But I've been doing the chemtrail stuff with Contrail Science for like over 10 years now. I was just looking at one of my old posts when on the satellite images. I was quite surprised at how long I've been doing it. And Metabunk been going about 5 years, and the flat Earth stuff came up maybe 2 years ago. I started to see things about flat Earth, and a bit over a year ago, I wrote a post on, you know, what should we do about debunking the flat Earth, and it basically said, like, all these people are basically either trolling or they're crazy. So there's no point addressing either of them. And I think most of them are just trolling, because no one could seriously believe this. You'd have to be like...
I don't think you're right.
I know. I've come to realize that I'm not. I was wrong. And that post now, you know, it's gone down the line, but it's you know, I've almost done a 180 from that.
It's stunning. It really is stunning.
Yeah.
And it's stunning how many people, like, this is why Jamie made these, youngjamie.com. You can go and get these Flat Earth shill shirts, that somehow or another we're being paid to say that the Earth is round. Like, the idea that anybody would actually believe it. I've had so many people tweet at me, I know where your checks are coming from, bro. You're a fucking sellout. I'm a sellout. Like, why would I give... Do you don't think that if I really thought the Earth was flat, like if someone thought the Earth was flat, what a revelation that would be. What an amazing discovery. Every scientist would be clamoring to expose this. Every single scientist. The idea that all these scientists who make their name off discoveries, by the way, especially a monumental and provable discovery like the world being flat, like somehow or another they would hide that. And then the big question is, why would the government say the world is flat? I mean, why would they, in any way, why would they rather hide the fact the world is flat? Like, what motivation would anybody have to show that the world was round? It would be pretty fascinating if we lived on this flat disk and everybody else throughout the universe was on a planet. We'd be like, whoa, what's going on? And there's a weird thing that's going on with some of these flat Earth people where they're linking this to assign that we are in some way special, that we are the chosen ones, and that we, and some. It keeps going back to Genesis, and that that we are the children of God, and that creation is true, and that evolution is a lie, and it gets to some weird anti-Jew stuff with a lot of these guys.
Yeah, well, a lot of conspiracy theories basically boil down to some kind of suspicion of other people, and quite often suspicion of Jewish people.
Why Jewish people? Why it's always the Jews, man?
It's just
people can't catch a break.
I don't know exactly why. I think perhaps perhaps because of the whole the Jews killed Jesus, so Christians don't like the Jews, or some Christians don't like the Jews.
Yeah.
So they've just been viewed as being an other, and they're often the Jewish, the broader Jewish population is often like a minority within cities, and so it's got an easy person to pick on when things go wrong. But I don't really. I'm sure there's loads of books written on why Jews are the subject of conspiracy theories.
Well, doesn't Dubay have a recent video about Jews and about Hitler? They all go down that road.
Yeah.
What can be done, if anything, other than your website? What can be done, if anything, to like my concern is these young kids that are on the fence. My thoughts are, look, I'm not going to reach out. There's some 45-year-old crazy person who's making YouTube videos 3 times a day about the world being flat and ranting and raving and challenging everyone to debates that he's never going to engage in. Mm-hmm. Those guys don't mean anything to me. Like, you can't do anything about them. But there's some 16-year-old kids out there that maybe are in high school and maybe don't have a real formal education in science or astrophysics, and they're getting confused, and they maybe smoke a little too much pot. That's you, motherfucker. Whoever's listening to this, that's you. And you start. I've been tricked before. If people aren't looking at the Himawari 8, if they see those images, I put those images up. And, dude, if you look at my Instagram post, it's filled with people angry at me.
Because they think it's fake.
They think it's fake, and they think I'm a shill because I put that up.
Yeah.
You know,
well, if you can't get people to look at things, that's a challenge in itself. How do you get people to look at things? But I think like if you start slowly, I engage with a lot of conspiracy theorists online. And I know when I'm doing it, I'm not actually going to reach the vast majority of the people I'm talking directly to, but I know there's lots of other people reading what I'm saying who will. And just because people are complaining about your posts of the Himawari 8 images doesn't mean that there aren't people who actually went and looked it up. Oh, I'm sure, because I think it got like 50,000 likes or something like that. So I'm sure even besides people that didn't like it, many people that were like, oh, really? Like, because that was one of the big things that the flat Earth people kept saying, that there's no photos of the Earth that aren't a composite from space. Like, it's just not true. One of the best fucking unintentional, hilarious things I read online. This dude wrote, "The Flat Earth Society has members all around the globe." Yeah. Whoops. Did he even realize what he was saying? Of course not. Or is that just him fucking around? Trolling? Yeah. I hope it's him trolling. Yeah. Yeah. The community thing, I think, is like a key thing. Yes. It was very confusing to me doing that television show, and it really changed me a lot. And it changed me to the point that people started accusing me of being co-opted by the government. That the government threatened my family and told me to stop talking about conspiracies. Like, and then the idea that I wouldn't say that if that was the case. Like, you don't think I would fucking tell everybody if someone threatened my family because I was talking about UFOs? I'd be telling everybody. I'd be like, hey, man. Yeah. I would tell all my friends. I'd be like, dude, they fucking threatened me because I was talking about UFOs. This shit is real. Hangar 18, Area 51. I think there was a paper a while ago published on like how many people it would take to cover up certain conspiracy theories and the probability of none of those people ever talking. Yeah. And it's just ridiculous. Like, you can't have tens of millions of people in on a conspiracy.
Well, the flat Earth one is the best one for that.
Yeah, I mean,
because what about all those people?
Of science,
Yeah.
every single scientist.
Yeah, and everyone who is involved in shipping routes and overseas flights, and the fact that you can fly west and land east. I mean, you can. You can just land in one spot, take off again, land in another spot, and you can eventually get to the same spot that you're at with a bunch of different flights that you can track them on a GPS. I mean,
But that's fake too, GPS.
Oh, that's fake.
It's,
That's right.
everything's fake. Yeah. Well, one thing I want to try to introduce to people who believe in the flat Earth is this concept of ground truth. Now, ground truth is a concept in satellite observations, which I kind of touched on before. Like you take a satellite observation and you see, does it match what you see on the ground? Or if you've got something like a weather prediction model, like you're predicting the weather, you see, does that match what you see on the ground? And this is something that you can do if you're actually really interested in looking into the flat Earth theory, is figure out what the actual ground truth is for something.
With a lot of what's going on with these people theorizing about flat Earth, and there seems to be some desire that people have to expose hidden truths, hidden discoveries, or things that are somehow or another being kept from everybody. And what's fascinating to me is they're looking into this nonsense. They're looking into this thing that's not real, when the real space, like the actual, like what is observable about space, is so mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And somehow or another, that is what you absolutely can see every day, what you absolutely can observe, what you absolutely can read about and learn about, and what scientists are discovering on a daily basis is so mind-blowing. When you see, like, they don't believe satellites are real. When you see how many satellites we actually have, that's what's really fucked. It's not that there's no satellites.
There's too many satellites.
There's way too many.
They're going to start bashing into each other, and then we'll have no more satellites.
There's thousands of them up there, and they have to time, like, space flights. They have to time space flights based on whether or not they're going to hit these satellites, or space junk, or some of the stuff that's been ejected from various rocket trips. I mean, it's still floating up there.
You seen the movie Gravity?
Yes.
Yeah, there's like a bit in that where the satellites start bumping into each other, and it's this big chain reaction. And eventually all the satellites get knocked out.
Did you see that Japanese expedition that they tried to do? They tried to capture space junk. Didn't work.
Yeah, I don't know how well it worked. They were had a big tether that they were dragging behind it.
Yeah, they were trying to like catch a bunch of space junk with a net, right?
Yeah.
Somehow or another.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, this stuff is way more interesting than.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the real stuff.
It's
That's
like
really
the
crazy.
flat Earth idea is it's like this tiny little thing. The Earth is flat, and we're stuck in this weird prison where people are keeping us here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, too, that somehow or another, by being on a flat planet, it gives you a different perspective. They don't want you to have that perspective, so they tell you that the world is round. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, one thing I've heard is that they think that if they can convince you that the world is flat when it isn't, then it's kind of like in 1984, where they get people to believe that 2 + 2 = 5. And they've actually indoctrinate people to genuinely believe that, even though they know it's not true, but they still believe it, and it's a way of mind control. So the same thing would have happened with the flat Earth, but on a far grander scale. You're not just convincing someone that 2 + 2 = 5, and war equals peace, etc., etc. You're convincing them that the Earth is flat when it's actually round. So by twisting their minds around something that's demonstrably false and making them think that it's correct, then you're gaining power over their minds in the same way that they did in 1984.
Right. Well, in the same way that Scientologists do, or Mormons do, or anybody that creates some sort of an ideology that's provably false. I mean, look, there's not a whole lot of difference between Scientology and flat Earth theory. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, if you really read L. Ron Hubbard's work, if you read what his actual theories were about the origins of mankind, it's pretty fucking loony. And yet there's thousands and thousands of members of Scientology, to the point where they're making documentaries about it and writing books about it, and these people are coming out and they've escaped the church and these harrowing stories. I mean, I had this guy on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, Ron Miscavige, David Miscavige's dad.
Yeah.
It's like, what in the fuck? This guy's wasted his life. Guy lived in this Scientology world for 50 years. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It is.
And there's not much difference between that and flat Earth theory. There really isn't.
You know how Scientology works? It's like gradually sucks you in a bit at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It just sounds all very reasonable at the start.
It's very self-helpy in the beginning.
More and more cult-like the further that you get into it.
Well, also the first original principles of it, like when we start, thinking positive and doing positive things, there's a lot of benefits to that.
Yeah.
And people start seeing those benefits. They start feeling positive, and then they get into the thetans and the frozen souls chucked into the volcano, and they're like, what?
Well, I think you could argue that there's some good in the flat Earth, not the flat Earth theory as such, but the flat Earth way of thinking, like questioning things. And I think this is something that people really like about it, is that you don't believe scientists just because scientists say something.
Right.
It's this thing they call the zetetic method, which basically is a Greek word meaning questioning. So you've got to question everything. You can't believe that gravity exists or that planets go around the sun just because scientists do it. You actually have to observe it for yourself. And if you can't observe it for yourself, then it isn't real, which leads people to think the Earth is flat because it kind of appears flat from various positions.
Right.
And they haven't been into space, or they haven't done the various experiments that show that it's not flat. So I think you got young people who are exposed to the idea of zeticism, and they think, oh, that's great, I'm rebelling against authority, like young people do, and they think, like, I will not believe the scientists, I'll do my own research. But then they get sucked into people like Dubay, who feed them all this nonsense.
He's very articulate, and very smooth the way he talks, and he makes these well-edited videos, and they're very compelling.
And because he's not an authority, he's not like, part of the government, he's part of the alt culture, they tend to give his arguments way more weight than mainstream science.
Yeah, and then they'll find out something like that New York Times article that was out a couple months back, where it showed that scientists from the 1950s were paid off by sugar companies to switch the blame to saturated fat, and they started attributing all these health problems that were really about sugar and about eating processed sugar, and started attributing them to the saturated fat. And it changed a lot of people's diets and really fucked a lot of people up in terms of, like, people started eating margarine and all these things that are filled with trans fats and very unhealthy for you. And they did it because they thought that they were, following science. And so questioning science and questioning scientists, occasionally you're right. Occasionally you'll find something like this, this conspiracy by the sugar industry.
There's the old saying, like, trust yet verify.
Yes.
Reagan popularized that with the SALT talks, I think
it
was.
That's a very good statement. Trust yet verify.
Trust yet verify. And, that's, if you want to trust Eric Dubay, that's fine, but, like, check the things that he says.
Yeah.
Like, I checked one of his things on the way here on the plane. He has a thing that a lot of them say, which is that the horizon always rises to eye level. So on the plane on the way here, I checked to see if this was actually correct. Now, most people, when they check to see if the horizon rises to eye level, they just look out the window and they say, oh, yeah, there's the horizon over there. It's at eye level. But on a round Earth, the horizon is actually going down a little bit when you look out the window of a plane, because you're 30,000 feet up in the air. It actually drops around 2 or 3 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very hard to see when you're just looking out of the window of the plane. So it's very easy to get taken into believing that it stays at eye level. So what I did is I took this a little carpenter's level.
You brought a carpenter's level?
A carpenter's level, a very small one. It's only like 8 inches long or so. And I've taped a small tube to the top, which is like a bit of a pen. And then I set it level and wedged it so it was level. And then I looked through the tube on the top of this level and saw where the horizon was. And the horizon was just below the end of the level. So the horizon had actually dropped away, which meant that Dubay's claim about the horizon rising to eye level, which is something you'd expect on a flat Earth, was actually incorrect. And it's demonstrably incorrect with this $2 level, which I actually got free from somewhere. And anyone can do this. You don't even need to be in a plane. In fact, it works better if you just on a cliff or something, like 1,000 feet up.
Well, that's another claim that people keep saying that are devotees of this flat Earth idea, that if you get on a plane and you look up and you look out the window, it looks flat. But I do not think that people understand perspective, and they do not understand how huge the Earth is. When you see, there's images, someone did an image that showed how far you are up when you're 30,000 feet in the air, and then how like huge the Earth actually is. And you get this like little image of a plane at 30,000 feet, and then the dot of the plane is represented, and the amount of distance between the Earth is in perspective. Yeah. And then you see how enormous the planet is. And it's just, you're dealing with something that's so big. It's almost, I mean, it feels like it's flat. It feels like it's flat because it's enormous and you're tiny.
Yeah, that's a huge issue with people, is that they don't really understand the scale of the planet, and they don't understand how little it actually curves.
Yeah.
There's a road. If you look up like the longest roads in America, longest straight road in America, there's this road. It's in like Oklahoma or somewhere, and it's about it's like 80 miles long, and it's just perfectly straight. But it actually isn't perfectly straight, because when they laid it out along a line of latitude. So it's one of the lines that goes around the Earth. So it's actually slightly curved. But when you look at it, it looks perfectly straight. You have to actually take the whole image and then draw a line from one end to the other in Google Earth, and you see that it deviates by just this tiny little amount. But if you were to drive along this road, you're actually driving, around, you're actually turning right slightly the whole time, but it looks perfectly straight because it's hardly moving at all. Over this 80 miles, it moves maybe like 10 feet or something. And people just don't realize just how small the curve of the Earth actually is. It looks flat.
And again, I think a real big problem with this theory and with a lot of these theories, a lot of these really outlandish conspiracy theories, is once they hook you, it's very difficult to unhook yourself. You don't want to believe that you got taken. You don't want to believe you've been had. You don't want to believe you've been fooled. So you keep going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, and you keep finding more and more confirmation bias, more people inside that walled garden, as you put it.
Yeah, and some people actually go out and do scientific experiments, and they try reasonably hard, some of them, but then they make some kind of mistake, and then they say this is actual proof that the Earth is flat. Like the level experiment that I did, someone did something similar with that. They said they use like a water level where you have two tubes connected, and you use the level of the water because the water's level's the same on both of them, and then they hold this up and see if it was below the horizon. But they did this experiment, and they did it at sea level, which meant it's always going to be exactly the same as the horizon. You've actually got to go up 1,000 feet before you can see anything. But they still, even though they thought that they were doing some science, but they made this one key mistake, and then they won't listen to anybody trying to tell them what the mistake actually was. There's a ridiculous amount of people doing flat Earth experiments on YouTube and just getting it completely wrong. I think the most common one is people taking photographs of something that they think shouldn't be visible from a certain position. Like they'll say, like, here's Catalina Island, and it's like 60 miles away, and according to the curvature of the Earth, that means it should be below 5 miles of curve, and so it shouldn't be visible. And then there's all these mistakes that they make. Some of them are like they do the math wrong. Some of them like they don't account for the fact that you've got to factor in how high the viewer is, or some of them they'll get entirely the wrong island. Like they'll say like, oh, this is this island which is just like 100 miles away, and they're actually looking at something that's 40 miles away.
Well, how come you can look out here's a simple one. How come you look out across the ocean and you don't see anything on the other side?
Yeah.
Like, what's over there?
Well,
it's so far away that you can't see it?
They got it out there. Because you wouldn't be able to see anything anyway because the atmosphere is so thick you wouldn't be able to see through it. Things get further away. They get fainter and fainter islands that are.
Do they believe in the atmosphere?
They do, and they use it a lot to make up reasons for certain things, like things going below the horizon.
That's where it gets weird, right? Is that people use some science to try to debunk science,
or things that they claim are science, like the law of perspective.
Yeah,
like the law of perspective doesn't exist. There's no law of perspective. I mean, if you were to make a law of perspective, you could say that the size of something decreases inversely proportional to its distance. So if it gets twice as far away, it's half the size. If it gets 4 times as far away, it's a quarter of the size. And that's it.
Yeah.
And that's all that perspective is. Now, people talk about vanishing points.
Well, that came up during the podcast with Eddie Bravo.
Yeah.
And Jamie brought it up, and then Eddie started posting pictures on his Instagram of a guy from the early 1900s who was an artist who wrote something about the law of perspective in drawing, just drawing. Yeah. He was just explaining how you define perspective when you're illustrating things.
That's the law of perspective on a piece of paper.
Right.
Or on a photograph. It's nothing at all to do with the real world. It's about what you can see visually, what the image is projected onto your eyes, or what comes through a camera when you take a picture. You know, what's the actual perspective of things. You know, things just get smaller.
But it sounds good when you say the law of perspective.
It does.
It sounds good, like you're invoking a law, a scientific law.
But then they will discard a real law like the law of universal gravitation or
I just, again,
Newton's
here's
laws
the
of
thing.
motion.
I don't have anything against Eric Dubay or any of these people. I really don't. My real concern is with young people out there that are listening to this that get sucked into this stupid shit. And there's so much that you could learn. There's so much that's fascinating about the universe. There's so much fascinating about the natural world. There's so much to learn. And to waste any time, the only thing that's good about it is you'll recognize the pitfalls that the human mind can slip into, that I've slipped into, that many people I know have slipped into. And again, it's not a like in any way, shape, or form. It's not something to be embarrassed about or sad about. It's a normal, natural human inclination to try to find things that are hidden truths.
There's something coming up in August, which is the eclipse. There's going to be a total eclipse of the sun over North America, I think August 21st this year. And I think that would be a great opportunity for people to encourage anybody who believes in the flat earth to actually start looking at what's going on.
Don't they have an excuse for that, though?
Yeah, but like, how are they going to justify it if they actually look at it? I think the challenge is getting people to look at things. The excuse, well, not the excuse. The reason we're giving them is that there's an eclipse, and everybody wants to look at the eclipse because it's an amazing thing. The moon goes in front of the sun and blocks it out.
Yeah, but I think that you're giving them too much credit. I think all someone has to do is make a YouTube video with some wonky explanation for why an eclipse works, and that it works because the Earth is a disk and the sun gets below the disk and it blocks it out from below. I mean, it just doesn't seem to me that it's enough.
This is like a solar eclipse, though.
I understand.
They can tell that the moon is going in front of the sun.
Oh, well, I know what you're saying is logical.
But no, even the flat earthers believe that the moon goes in front of the sun for a solar eclipse.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, because you can track the position of the moon through the sky, and they know that it gets closer to the sun every time.
Don't they believe that like the Earth sits flat and that everything spins around the Earth? Isn't that the
do.
idea?
Well, yeah, it's the Earth is flat and the sun. Sun and the moon are like orbiting above like this, but sometimes the moon is going to be below the sun and it blocks out the light of the sun, and that's how an eclipse happens on the flat earth and on the round earth. So it would be an amazing thing to see, even if you're a flat earth believer, this very rare coincidence when the moon is in front of the sun. So you should encourage people who are flat earth believers to look at this amazing thing that's happening.
They don't give a fuck. Is there uniformity in the flat Earth community? Have they like all agreed, or is there like dissension? There's some people say, that it's because they're the ice wall. No, there's no fucking ice wall. It's just a drop off, and everybody dies.
There is kind of like this mainstream thing where the Dubay model of things. It's kind of like in the chemtrail community. You've got this one guy, Dane Wigington, who's this really popular guy. And then you've got like a bunch of other people.
Which one is he? Is he the guy that made that the videos?
No, that was Michael J. Murphy was the guy who made the videos.
That guy was a little loony.
And Wigington is the guy who lives in a big house on 200 acres up in the mountains somewhere. And he got obsessed with his solar panels being blocked by contrails, and so became a chemtrail believer. But he's like the equivalent of Dubay, really, because he's the guy who's really promoting it. I think like people like things like the flat earth, they get things out of them. They're getting something out of it. It's giving them purpose in their life. It's like, it's kind of like a hobby in a way. Like you're just doing something because you enjoy doing it, like playing chess.
Yeah.
Except along with that hobby of doing stuff, they actually have a belief that is required for them to actually do their hobby. And they don't, obviously think of it like that, but that's essentially what it is. They have this activity they like doing, like gardening or whatever, but it requires them to believe that the Earth is flat. So they spend all their time, making YouTube videos about how the Earth is flat, or doing their experiments about how the Earth is flat, and they're getting something out of it because it's their little hobby. Now, I do the same thing, except I'm actually doing it for science. Like I do these fun little experiments. Like on the plane today, I was on the plane like wedged up against the window, like looking through this, holding my camera up against it, and the woman next to me must have thought I was this crazy guy.
You should have told her, I'm proving that the Earth isn't flat, ma'am.
She probably thought that I was thinking that the Earth was flat. I've seen other people on YouTube, they're bringing levels onto the plane, and they're like, hey, look, the level isn't moving. Should we talk about some more flat Earth stuff?
Sure. What else you got there? You got notes.
I do. I wrote down everything I could think of on the flat Earth, which is a shitload of stuff. The International Space Station.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
They think that footage is fake.
They think it's all fake.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
But what you can do is you can go back to the Skylab footage and ask someone who believes in flat Earth how they faked the Skylab footage. Because there's footage of Skylab with people like, they're running around in circles in zero gravity. There's long sequences of people doing stuff in zero gravity. And it's in a space that's actually too big to fit in any plane that's ever been built. So it couldn't be filmed in a thing, where they do the
Vomit
parabola,
comet.
the vomit comet. Yeah, it has to be something that was actually zero gravity.
Yeah, for people who don't know what that is, when you see scenes in movies where someone was moving in zero gravity, they would film that in a plane that would literally be, they would get the plane up to like 40,000 feet or whatever, and then they would just literally shoot down so that you're kind of going faster down than gravity, and you could float around in it.
So they're in zero gravity here.
Yeah.
Running around in circles. They do all kinds of stuff, like they get 3 of them running. And the space that they're in there is so big that it wouldn't fit in. Like, it probably wouldn't even fit in the beluga thing that they use for transporting planes. But
well,
at
that
the time,
brings us back to Area 51, because there's some giant airplanes that they make out of Area 51 that they use to simulate zero gravity. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that this is in space.
Yeah, and this is like from the 70s.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
But like the space station, the International Space Station, it flies over at regular intervals. And this is one of the ground truth things that I was talking about earlier.
You can see it.
You can look up when it's going to fly over. You can get them to send you alerts. There's a site called Spot the Station. It's a NASA site. But you don't have to trust it. But you can still sign up, and it will tell you when the space station is going to fly over. To the second. It'll tell you to the second when it's going to appear, and how high it will be, and how long it'll be visible for. And you can get it to send you an email, and then get your camera out and take photographs of it when it happens. So you know that this website is correct, like you've proven it on the ground. And you can also like do it from different positions and get 2 people doing it, and you can figure out how high the space station is by triangulating it. So, what's this angle, what's that angle, how far apart they are. And you can figure out that the space station is actually 250 miles high. It is actually orbiting the Earth at 250 miles. And you can also take photographs of the space station with this camera, and you can zoom in close enough on the space station to actually see the shape of the space station and the solar panels and the main modules and everything. So you can see there actually is something that is moving along the same path that NASA says is moving along, and at the same speed as they suggest, and it's at the right height, and it's the right size, because you can do the calculations on the camera and figure out what the size of the space station is. So we know that something that the exact same size and shape and speed of the space station is exactly where NASA says it is. And there's really no way you could fake that on a flat Earth, because you'd have to have this bizarre, 1,000-foot wide floating thing moving along at like 14,000 miles an hour, doing this kind of whizzy pattern all around, this spirograph pattern around the flat Earth. It's just, it's literally impossible. Whereas if you look at it from the globe model point of view, it's just the space station orbiting the globe.
Obviously, it's orbiting the globe. But does this bother you sometimes that you're even debunking this stuff?
It does. I sometimes catch myself and go,
what the fuck am I doing? Yeah.
It's obvious. One of the most stupidly obvious proofs that we're not on the flat Earth is that if you get 3 people, you stand one of them at the bottom of South Africa, one of them at the bottom of South America, one of them in Australia, and have them all look south from that position. Now, on the flat Earth, you got one person here, one person here, one person here. And if they all look south, like away from the North Pole, they're all looking in completely different directions. But on the real world, what do they actually see? They all see the exact same constellation, the Southern Cross, right in front of them. So they're all looking in different directions on the flat Earth. But on the round Earth, they're all just looking towards the Southern Cross. So
Right, I see what you're saying.
it's literally impossible to do that on the flat Earth.
Right, and you can actually see this and take photographs of the
Yeah.
constellations and compare them.
Yeah, and that's something I was talking about with the ground truth thing with Stellarium. Like you could go virtually yourself to these places and see what the sky looks from that position. So either Stellarium is lying, or these, the Southern Cross does actually appear from these 3 different positions.
Well, that's another thing that these flat Earth people keep bringing up is Polaris. The idea that this one star stays put,
That's a great one.
and that all these other stars rotate around it, and that this is somehow or another proof that the Earth is not spinning, or that we're on a flat Earth. What's so stupid about that is that people in Australia have a completely different constellation.
That's right, and the stars rotate the other direction around.
Yeah.
I mean, the stars are all coming towards us from the east. So if you look north, they're going that way. If you look south, they're going that way. So they're rotating around the North Star, which actually isn't anything special. It's just the star that happens to be closest to the point, the North Point.
And it changes all the time.
If you zoom in, you can actually see there are stars that are even closer. And if you take a time lapse of the North Star, it actually makes a little circle.
Well, and also that North Star is not the same North Star
No.
as in the past.
Yeah, because the axis of the Earth, there's this thing called precession where
Every 26,000 years, it wobbles. Yeah.
wobbles away.
Yeah.
But yeah, the south, everyone's looking at the same thing in the south, and the stars are rotating in that direction. But yeah, Polaris is a good one for a number of reasons. One, it's not really fixed. It's 1 degree off from the center of the celestial sphere.
But if you look at a time-lapse photograph of the Earth, if they point a camera up, like say from North America, what you get is the illusion that all these stars are spinning around, that one star is fixed. But it's because you're looking at a time-lapse of only a few hours where it's dark out at night, whereas this precession of the equinoxes is a very slow process that takes 26,000 years. And you're just not going to get a 26,000 years time-lapse photo of the Earth.
You could simulate it.
Yeah, you could simulate it.
Stellarium,
Yeah.
and no one's going to believe that.
What's interesting is that some cultures, it's been pretty much observed that some cultures were aware of the precession of the equinoxes thousands of years ago somehow, that they kind of knew.
Yeah, maybe quite impressive. Yeah, well, a lot of old cultures did actually take records of the stars, because stars were used for navigation.
Yeah.
The pole star, obviously is something that gives you this fixed north degree, but the other stars as well. Like if you know how long it takes to go from one place to another. I don't really understand the exact maths, but you can use it for navigation. It's called celestial navigation.
What other ridiculous things can we point out before we wrap this up? 'Cause my head's starting to hurt. What other things are ridiculous?
Some of the flat earthers wonder why the Earth's atmosphere isn't sucked off into space.
Well, how about the one where that's a good one, but
It's a good one because I've wondered that myself. I know now why why that is. I know why it doesn't suck into space.
why doesn't it get sucked into space?
Because you think that a vacuum sucks things.
Right.
It's going to suck everything. It sucks everything away. So if there's this atmosphere on the Earth, the vacuum of space will suck it away. But the thing is, vacuum doesn't actually suck. Vacuum is nothing. It has no energy. It doesn't do anything. There's no power. The reason that things flow into vacuum is air pressure, and air pressure is a function of gravity. So the gravity is pulling everything down towards the Earth. So there's nothing that can push it out. If you see what I'm saying. If you imagine if the universe was suddenly filled with loads and loads of gas, like oxygen, say, and then you stick a big planet in there, all the gas would gravity would bring it down towards this planet.
Well, they don't believe in gravity, though.
Yeah, they don't believe in gravity.
It's electromagnetic. This is my favorite new one. Did you see the fun one where they show that if the Earth was a globe, that all the water would be on the bottom?
Yeah,
this one's wonderful.
I think that one's a joke.
You think it's a joke? How could you be so sure?
I thought about the other ones as well, but
No. Bring it up, Jamie. This one's wonderful. I think they're being serious.
Yeah. Now the gravity thing, though, it's kind of like almost irrelevant because
Yeah?
we know that things fall down.
Right. But it's electromagnetic something or other.
It's a magical force that's making things
Magical.
fall down. It doesn't really matter. Gravity, we could say we don't really understand what gravity is.
How do they explain lava? Because lava is a part of gravity too, right?
Lava?
Well, it's the idea that all these rocks are pushing down, and there's extreme friction and heat. And
buoyancy and density.
Yeah.
Buoyancy and density, there are functions of gravity. Like if you stick something in the water, it's all the water is flowing to the bottom.
We're looking at this image, folks. It says gravity is not strong enough to stop a small stream from flowing to its lowest point. Then what is stopping the oceans north of the equator from emptying into the oceans south of the equator? This is what the Earth would look like if we lived on a globe. Gravity is pseudoscience. ... A theory that can't be proven. They forgot the apostrophe in can't, you fucking dunce.
Can't be proven.
Look at that image, though. It's hilarious. Why is there water on the top at all? How about that, you stupid fuck?
It's raining.
Is that what it is? It rains on top only?
It evaporates from the bottom and comes around the top.
That would be kind of cool if half the planet was dirt and half the planet was water. It'd be kind of weird.
Yeah,
Why would that be any weirder than what it is now?
Yeah, the reason they don't like gravity is that if you actually apply the laws of gravity to a flat Earth, the flat Earth would actually scrunch up into a ball.
Oh. Oh, yeah, right, of
all
course.
that rock, there's no way it can lay flat like that. It would either be like gravity would be intensely large because you've got an infinite amount of rock underneath you, or it's like something on the back of a turtle or something, and it would just scrunch up into a ball.
What do they think lava is?
Molten rock. I mean, they just think it's buoyant because it heats up and becomes less dense than the other rock.
But why is it down there in the bottom? Why is the core of the Earth?
The fires of hell are heating it up.
Oh, the fires of hell. Look at this. What is this? Tennis ball?
Yeah, why doesn't water fly off the Earth when it spins like
because
this?
the force is spinning. This is a fundamental misunderstanding that people have. They misinterpret angular velocity and linear velocity. Like we know the Earth is spinning around 1,000 miles an hour.
Right.
So they think like if this ball was spinning around at 1,000 miles an hour, then the water would fly off.
Right.
But it's not flying off because of the surface of the ball going 1,000 miles an hour. It's flying off because it's rotating 50 times a second or whatever, 10 times a second. It's the angular velocity which creates the outward force. Linear velocity has got nothing to do with it. It's only when you're actually turning. When you're driving in a car, like if you're driving really, really fast, you don't really feel any forces act on you. But when you go around a corner, you get slammed over to one side. So it's the rate of your angular velocity. Now, the Earth rotates once every 24 hours. So it's going really, really, really slow.
Put that back up, please.
And if you imagine that tennis ball, and if you take it and stick it on a little turntable that rotates once every 24 hours, the water is not going to fly off.
Right.
And it's the exact same force acting on the Earth, because the Earth rotates once every 24 hours. The fact that it's like going 1,000 miles an hour is completely irrelevant, because it's essentially going in straight lines around the edge.
Jamie, go to that photo on the upper left-hand side. Scroll up.
This thing?
Up, yeah. Satan's globe, Earth lies.
This bottom picture here is a great example of how ridiculous things are.
Hold on. Satan's globe, Earth lied. The Big Bang and evolution explain life. You were an accident. We evolved from primordial soup. We are specks in the universe. Some people are more valuable than others. Foundation for the new world order. You are worthless. Next image. God's flat Earth. Creation is the only explanation. We are incredibly valuable. The Bible is 100% true. We live on an unmoving, firm foundation. You were created by God, in all caps. God loves you. Oh, that seems better. That seems better.
That's probably a true believer there.
Oh yeah, you think?
That image there is a good example of like things that are just completely ridiculous on the flat Earth. Like you see, they have the sun on one side and it's illuminating half the Earth.
Yeah.
And the way it's curved like that.
They think the sun's way closer too, right?
Yeah, they think the sun acts like a spotlight. But you look at it there, it's not acting like a spotlight. It's illuminating all of the ice wall.
Where's the ice wall?
There's the white stuff around.
Oh, that's the ice wall?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which is actually, it's just Antarctica stretched into this projection.
Why doesn't one of those dickheads get in a boat and take a photo of that wall?
Well, that's another thing. Like they think they've got guards all the way around it.
Oh, there are guards.
Yeah. But that's what is that? That's like 36,000 miles
of guards.
Of guards in the ocean, and on a freezing ice wall. It's like the wall from Game of Thrones. It's at 36,000 miles.
Well,
of
they make up facts, and then they use those facts to kind of state their point. Like, it's illegal to fly over Antarctica.
Yeah. That's kind of based on like a quarter truth. Like you can't fly a 2-engine jet over Antarctica because if one engine fails, you wouldn't be able to get to an airport. So they only allow 4-engine jets, like 747s, A380s, to fly. So all those flights that you see that go over at the Antarctic ice, they're all 747s.
Yeah, because if it fucks up, you're doomed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long way with nothing.
There's a set of regulations called ETOPS, which is all about how far you can go away from an airport and what configuration of plane that you have to do.
See, now, I wonder how many people are listening to this and it's turning their mind. Do you think it's possible? Do you think there's got to be a spectrum of people that believe?
There is. There's a spectrum, and some people will be turned.
This will cause a lot of ruffled feathers. Are you ready for the shill tweets? Are you ready? Will you wear a Round Earth shill shirt if we get you one? At youngjamie.com?
I don't know. I actually don't like.
It's very comfortable.
I know it's all in good humor.
It's very soft. You don't like joking around
people
about
take it seriously.
Oh yeah, but those people are assholes.
I had a T-shirt that said "I make stuff up" that my wife got me because like I'm always making stupid jokes.
Right.
And someone saw a photograph of me online wearing this T-shirt that said "I make stuff up," and they said, "There's Mick West, missing." And they were completely serious.
Yeah, but they're stupid.
Yeah, but
that's part of the problem.
It makes it harder to reach people if you know they're pointing. It's a distraction,
right?
Something like that.
Yeah, I guess I hear what you're saying. I'm pretty easy to dismiss. They always say that you work for the government. That's the big one. You're a government employee. You made video games, right?
Yeah, I'm a retired video game programmer. I helped make the Tony Hawk series of video games. Made enough money to retire on. And now I just potter around the house, do gardening, and do debunking stuff. Do fun experiments in the backyard.
What you're doing, you're living the goddamn American dream. That's what you're doing. You made enough money to not have to slave away. And these assholes want to think that you're some government shill. Like the government's involved in the Tony Hawk video games. They recruited you. They said, listen, I know you're doing a good job making these video games. We got a better place for you. What you need to do is cover up the flat earth and chemtrails and UFOs. And what else? What else you cover up?
Morgellons.
Is there anything else in your pile of notes over there that you wanted to alert people to?
I think like the thing I would really encourage people to do is look closely at things. Like it's really hard to do, but if people who are on the fence, they need to look very, very closely at the claims that people are making, like the claims that Eric Dubay is making. If Eric Dubay says something like, the horizon always rises to eye level, this is something you can actually check. Now it's not easy. You got to have to be reasonably careful with this $2 level, but you can actually check to see whether that is correct. You can check for yourself if something reappears over the horizon when you zoom in, which is something that he claims, something that's it's a ridiculous claim that's been made for like over 100 years, that when things move away from you, they disappear from the bottom up, and if you zoom in, they will reappear. It doesn't actually happen. When you zoom in on something, all it does is it makes the picture bigger, it makes the image bigger. And you can check this for yourself. You can go down to Santa Monica Pier, you can focus on like the North Shore, like Malibu, and you can zoom in and you can see that the picture does not change at all throughout the entire zoom. And when you're fully zoomed in, so you can see the cars whizzing along PC8, you will see that the bottom part of the road is and the buildings is obscured. And you can do it with Catalina. You can turn around and look at Catalina, and you can zoom in on that, and you can see that 2/3 of Catalina Island is missing.
I think a lot of what you're saying is very important, because what we're talking about is just being able to look at things objectively and use facts to determine that this one theory in particular, flat earth theory, is not true. But I think what's really going on is a thought process. There's a way the human mind gravitates towards these puzzles and these problems and these undiscovered truths, these mysteries that people just want to be the person that knows. They want to be in the know. And it's very intoxicating. And that's what really this stuff's all about, more than anything. It's about the way the mind works. And it's about the way your mind can be tricked. And it's an information issue that we're dealing with today with things like YouTube, where no one can stop you from making, like, you don't have to go through the people that work at NBC or Fox or whatever. You don't have to go through the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times editorial board where they have to review your paper and go, hey, you wrote a bunch of stuff that's not true. No, that doesn't have to happen anymore. now you can just make a video, and it can be really well done with good music and good images, and the way it's done can really influence a lot of people who don't have a background in science or are not curious about looking into the debunking version of it. Like, that's why whenever someone sends me something, I always say, just Google that, whatever you sent me, and then debunked. Just do that first.
Yeah.
And then look at both sides. You know, but people don't want that debunk. That debunk's not sexy.
Yeah.
The conspiracy sexy.
I know people are turned off by the debunking thing.
Yeah, they hate it.
Yeah, and that's why I do tell people to go do their own research, but really actually do some real research, as in do some actual observations and experiments.
That's boring. YouTube videos are fun. Anything else?
And it's all the same. I know it's kind of complicated, but let me just run it by you real quick.
Okay.
Maps. Have you heard of the Mercator projection?
No.
The standard map that you see in schoolrooms has this really stretched out Iceland, Greenland. It looks like kind of distorted. It's not like the real world. And the reason that we use these maps, this particular type of map, is that if you draw a line between 2 points on the map, and then you sail along that heading, you will end up at that point. Now, this is a type of navigation called rum line navigation that's been used for hundreds of years. And the thing is that the Mercator map, gets stretched out at the top, but it also gets stretched out at the bottom, because the navigators from hundreds of years ago knew that the world was round, and that they knew if they drew a line between 2 points in the southern hemisphere using the same map, it would get you to that destination using rum navigation, which is basically just one more piece of evidence that the globe map matches reality, because people have used rum navigation for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years.
So you're saying that the image of the continents is in some way stretched out and distorted?
Yeah, well, if you take a globe...
Well, why do they do that?
Well, if you take a globe and you can't just put it onto a flat surface.
Right.
Because you're going to have to distort it somehow. So there's various different ways people use of putting it on the surface. You could just take your latitude and longitude and just map it into a rectangle, and that works out fairly well. That's a nice thing. That's called an equirectangular map. But the most common map that was used before, say 30 years ago, was this Mercator projection, which is the map that people use for navigating ship routes. So you can get from point A to B. If you wanted to go from England to North America, across the ocean, you just draw a line between the 2 points, and then you say, oh, that's the heading I've got to go in. So you head off in that heading. Now, that doesn't take you in a straight line. It actually takes you in a kind of a curved line, because if you're going on a constant compass heading on a globe, you actually kind of curve in towards the poles or away from the poles, depending which way you're going.
I really don't understand what you're saying.
I know. But all it is that there's this method of navigation that people use that relies upon the Earth being a globe. And it's this really, really simple map that is in thousands of homes, millions of homes and schools that everybody uses. And you can see that on the map, the lines get smaller towards the top and they get smaller towards the bottom. And if people are doing a voyage around the world, they're going to use this map. And it only works on the globe world.
That's another issue, too. People have circumnavigated the globe.
Yeah, well, they think they just sail around the outside, which, of course, would take a lot longer. That's another thing, Australia. Have you seen Australia on the flat Earth map?
No.
It's like, I don't know. You see it on that image that was up earlier. It's like this kind of squish thing. You know what Australia looks like? It's more or less like this.
Looks like
on
Scooby-Doo.
the flat Earth, it's kind of like this. It's all stretched out. It's like twice as long and half as wide.
Have you seen the conspiracy theory that Australia is Scooby-Doo?
No. Scooby-Doo's head?
Yes.
Yeah. I can see that.
It's just a joke.
Italy is a boot.
Yeah, it's one of those joke memes.
Yeah, so the distances between places in Australia don't work.
Is that the flat Earth
map?
map?
Yeah, that's the flat Earth map, and that's Australia. And Australia looks nothing like that. And if you lived in Australia, you would know it looks nothing at all like that.
It's just hilarious that there's so many versions of this. It's hilarious that there's so many people who have taken the time in front of a computer to create this flat Earth map and put this ice wall. And the idea that, how do they know it's an ice wall? Where's the pictures?
There's pictures of ice shelves from like Antarctica.
So they think that's the whole wall?
They think that's the wall, yeah. So that you'll see memes like, globe earthers be like, what ice wall? And then,
be like is
suck
great.
on this, and they show you the
suck on this
picture of an ice shelf, which is like 200 feet high. I wish you could fly over.
Well, that's the mentality, right? It's a bunch of little kids or a bunch of dumb people or a bunch of people that have very little education or a bunch of people that are also they're preaching to the choir.
Yeah. It ties into like misconceptions that are natural.
That's why whenever someone sends me something, I always say, just Google that, whatever you sent me, and then debunked.